Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Disney Antiquities and Collectibles, the D23 Recap Edition. That's running a little behind, and my special guest, Jason Clough, is getting his invitation now as we speak. If any of you want to join us, talk about your experience at D23 this weekend, go ahead and message me, send me your email, and I will try to get you on. Busy weekend. Okay, I have to confess, first of all, that this was my first time at a D23, and it was pretty fun. And I see my special guest, Jason Clough, is there. He is hanging out with us. Here we go. Jason, how you doing,
You
brother?
like my you like my up background on
I,
me?
I love the background. It's got a feel to it. There's a feel to it.
I feel like this is surreal knowing that like less than 24 hours ago we were in the same room on the convention floor and now we're like a country on opposite sides of the country. So
You know what's funny is I was thinking about that too. I was like, okay, Jason was just here yesterday. Now he's back in North Carolina, and he's going, okay, I'm decompressing. I'm absorbing everything that I took in. Did you know? It's got to be. Is it sensory overload? Can you hear me? Okay, Jace, can you hear me?
you
Uh
burped
oh.
for a second, but you
Okay.
were going through sensory overload.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, is it sensory overload? Is it, I mean, everything you saw and did, it had to have gone by.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was lucky. I I love Disney. You know that about me. I
Yeah.
love a lot of the history and sort of the backstory. But this, to your point, was my first time actually going to a D23, primarily because it was the first time I could get a ticket. It's not for lack of not trying,
Yeah.
um, but but yeah, I mean, look, I had a 3-day pass.
Okay.
I got in a day early, and I feel like I went in with it with a plan, right?
Yeah.
Like I sat down, I was like, look, these are the panels I want to do, these are the things I want to accomplish.
Yeah.
Um, and I think when you get there, you have to realize you're going to get a fraction of that done.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. Because
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, this panel stops at like 12:30, and this
Yeah.
next one doesn't start until 1. Of course I can make it.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no, because I'm like I walk the floor and then I get like, ooh, what's that? I want to go
Yeah.
get that.
And it's funny because I was invited to a panel, Mary Poppins panel. And I was all excited. I was like, all right. And I mean, everything comes at you so fast because, as to stay with your booth. But I can't even imagine if you're walking around and you're just hung up on, oh, look at that. Oh my gosh. And time gets away from you so fast that you're going, okay, am I going to miss that? So how many panels did you actually get to?
So I think I got to about 4
Okay.
across the various days.
Yeah.
And then I did a combination of some, talent signings. I did the some of the experiences around like Lucasfilms, for instance, sort of seeing what I call like this portable mobile version of the volume and
Yeah.
seeing like this massive like setup was fascinating to sort of see the advancements in technology that are allowing these stories to come together in new, immersive, innovative ways. It's interesting though. You talk about the Mary Poppins panel, and I got to tell you, like, so of the
Excuse me.
panels I got to, there were two that were sort of jumping out at me as near and dear, and I think it's probably because they were the more emotional panels, and I did not know that going into it, right? But you're talking about like the road to Cherry Tree Lane, which
Yeah.
was really a panel around Walt Disney's Mary Poppins.
Yeah.
And I'll preface this by saying, for anybody that is listening that was in the room, you'll attest to the fact that what I'm about to tell you is true. But for everybody else, I mean, this room, by the time we walked out of it, I don't think there was a dry eye in the room, myself included.
Really?
And for those who don't necessarily have or didn't have the opportunity to be there, I mean, you have to understand, like, the top of it was fascinating, right?
Yeah.
So we were honored to have Grammy award winning producer, Disney music historian Randy Thornton there. So
Yeah.
he sort of came on the stage and he's talking really about how Walt's daughters, Diane and Sharon, he's talking about Davy Crockett, Vista Records, um, Annette Funicello, all of these really important intersections and how they all came together in a sequence that created this world that led us to Mary Poppins.
Mary Poppins.
And
Yeah.
it's crazy to me, Vince, that, like, you have to remember, and I think this is so true of Walt and of Disney himself. Um, he had approached PL Travers numerous times and said,
Yeah.
"Look, I really want to do Mary Poppins," and she outright said no.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we're talking about this journey, and it's why I love that is because if you think about it, you and I were talking about this yesterday at the expo. It's like that's Walt's life.
Yeah.
Walt was constantly told no,
No.
and yet
Yeah.
he continued to pursue it, right?
Yeah.
So so we're listening to this story, we're listening to this narrative, and towards the end, um, we get to this emotional moment, which is, really two parts. One, it's this notion of the influence that the Sherman Brothers had on the music of Mary Poppins,
Yeah.
and to a large part, the song that Walt knew and loved all those years, right? It
Yeah.
was Feed the Birds. And
Feed the birds.
right? And you could see in Randy's face, you could
Uh-huh.
hear this sort of like graspiness come upon him as he sort of is holding back tears as
Yeah.
he starts to go, look, I mean, if you think about the role, what happened after Walt passed
Yeah.
and the sort of the silencing of Walt's voice, but that the
Yeah.
music lived on, culminated several months ago now with the passing of Richard Sherman.
Yeah.
And he pauses and he goes, basically, and I'm going to paraphrase here, it's another voice silenced,
Yeah.
gone.
Gone.
And he
Forever.
said, I can only think of one thing to honor the people, Richard in this moment that he would want to give him this sort of really important moment. And that is that when Walt passed away, he continued the voice of Walt through his songs onward.
Yeah.
And now with Richard's passing and sort of now both of the Sherman brothers passed, he said, I can only think of one thing to do. And he plays an audio file. And I think it's so powerful when you don't have the video to go with it.
Yeah.
And it's an audio file of probably one of the last recordings with with Richard at the piano in Walt's office, playing and singing Feed the Birds.
Yeah.
And when you hear it and you hear the sort of the graininess of the audio, the subtlest of inflections in Richard's voice as he sings
Yeah.
it,
Mhm.
we all lost it. We're like, there's no way.
I
And yet,
I
it's
talked
not
to
a
a few
bad thing.
people. I talked to a few other people that went, and they said they were, they had tears, and they looked around and everybody else had tears streaming. And
Oh,
they
you
were
you
like,
you
"Okay,
could
I'm
hear the sobbing in the room. We were all like
really?"
that. I mean,
Yeah.
oh, 100%. I mean, Randy broke down on stage. I think we were all in tears for two reasons. For me, three, right? One,
Yeah.
I felt a profound sadness over, obviously Walt,
Yeah,
over Richard, number
Richard.
two. And then thirdly, for Randy, who's standing up there. And I can't imagine how hard it must have been for him to tell this story and to recount it and to get
Yeah,
through it the way he did. But
yeah,
yeah, we were all male, female,
yeah.
young,
It,
old, we were all in
yeah.
tears.
Everybody was crying. And it's funny because the last time we talked to Jeff Curdy, and how close he was, to the Sherman brothers and his friendship, and just to know how many people's lives they've touched with, Mary Poppins, but everything else, all their other music. When you go through their lives, if you've seen the documentary, everything that they've done is just so incredible. So this tribute had to have been just so touching, but at the same time, that's another part of the history of Disney that's gone forever. Yeah, it's recorded, but it's gone forever, and it's even more sad. Another part of our childhood is gone.
Yeah, and it's tough, right? Because I mean, like I part earlier in that same panel, they were playing some of the audio recordings in the room when P.L. Travers was sort of talking with Disney about the making of Mary Poppins.
Yeah,
And again, for me, you can hear the stories of
yeah,
like, oh, she said no, and then all of a sudden she said yes. And you can even hear the stories of, well, every time she met with Disney, she wanted the meetings recorded.
yeah.
But there's something very profoundly different when you listen to the audio, you have
Uh,
no visual accompaniment, and you
yeah,
hear her, and
yeah,
you hear her reflecting upon something that was talked about, like a piece of the script, and a line. And at least in this panel, they were playing a part where Mary Poppins was responding to a line, and she took very much a lead role in going, that is not how Mary Poppins would respond.
yeah.
And it was about this sort of and yet it was about this sort of like comedic element. And she's like, but Mary Poppins was never intended to be comedic. The
No,
comedy is almost in the wit and the
yeah,
seriousness and the lessons that she learns. And yes, that does come across funny.
yeah,
But her point was is it's not what she says, it's how she says it.
yeah,
And again, just hearing her in the inflections in her voice, I sort of associate it again. The whole thing gave me chills,
yeah,
in a very positive way. But it's like you hear their passion,
yeah,
right? Like this is a character that we all know and love through the stories, but for her, this was Mary Poppins was very, very real.
yeah,
And I think the same thing I sort of felt from Randy when he was talking was that, these songs, these were like the children of
yeah,
the Sherman brothers. And
yeah,
that's the part where you just kind of you stop and you go, there's so much deeper level to all this stuff. And
yeah,
I don't know, we talk about it and we say, but it's just profound when you're in the room and you have it happen. So
yeah. So, you go to that panel, you're what because you went all 3 days. You were there all 3 days,
yep.
in the pictures you must have and the people you saw, the people you met, who, in just in one day, just Sunday, all the people that me and Matt were talking to, who was somebody that you wanted to meet that you were hoping to see that you got to talk to or wanted to meet?
Yeah, it's interesting. If you had asked me this Saturday, I would have said, you know, seeing somebody like Doug Chang on the floor, right?
Yeah.
Head of
Oh yeah.
creativity and design at Lucasfilms.
Yeah.
Um, Probably only because I was just coming out of an experience and was walking and talking, and I saw this person's back, and I almost actually walked into the person, and I actually said, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and he turns around, and I'm like, "Oh, it's Doug," and you know, it's just fascinating because I was there with my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law,
Yeah.
and we had gone as a family to Star Wars convention in London last year.
Yeah.
And it's funny because we actually on the way home my brother and sister-in-law were on the same plane with Doug, and they had a conversation. They ended up having a conversation. At any rate, they knew that my wife and I are big Star Wars fans, and he was like basically very gracious enough to be like, if you would like, I'm happy to sign something for your brother-in-law.
Yeah.
Which ended up being, I think, like a Virgin Atlantic or Delta, boarding pass.
Yeah.
But may the force be with you, Doug, and I still have it to this day. And he recognized my brother-in-law when we were coming out of the experience, and so
Really?
he was able to finally connect that moment back now to me in person. And
Yeah.
again, so I think that was really cool.
Yeah.
Um, I think the other thing that you start to get into is like, and again, speaking just for the expo, I mean, you know, Josh is walking around the floor. Dave
Yeah.
Filoni, John Favreau, they're
Yeah.
walking around the floor. And,
Yeah.
but I will say this, and this is a funny story, at least in my mind. Um, I was sitting over at California Adventure on Thursday, so before the even convention even started. And I was sitting down having lunch with my sister-in-law, and I saw somebody on my feeds post a photo that said Disney Imagineer Tony Baxter is in California Adventure today, and there's a photo of him.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Figment fan. I
Oh
think
yeah.
Figment is that. I mean, who doesn't, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I was so I said to my sister in law, I was like, "Hey, did you know Tony Baxter's in California Adventure?" And I look up to hear her reaction face to face, and across the bridge, there is Tony coming across the bridge, like at the exact same moment. Like it couldn't have been more perfectly timed. Um, and of course, now you're like, oh my gosh, this person that is so influenced my childhood is right there for the very, very first time that I'd ever seen him. And I just had a really nice conversation with him briefly at the parks, and then had the chance to have him autograph a poster for me over at the Roosevelt store, because he was part of that with James Mulligan
Yeah.
as part of the design and the element of this beautiful magic house of wonders, if you would.
Yeah.
So I would say those are definitely the standouts. And then Sunday comes. Um, and it's funny for those listening. You know, you may not know, but like Vince, you and I, we've known each other through the podcasting world and everything else for over a year,
Yeah.
but we had never met in person.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's not just meeting somebody that's famous. Sometimes it's just literally connecting with other people who share that same passion. And then I turn around and speak of the devil. All of a sudden, you're introducing me to somebody like Matt. And I'm like, wow, now I'm standing next to, right? And now I'm standing next to a person, who also has a rich history and a background that is fascinating to me. So I would
Yeah.
say Sunday the highlight was truly, honestly, even if Matt wasn't here, I was just about to say, meeting Matt,
Yeah.
and
Well,
hearing about and seeing like the sketch that his father did that you were talking to me about. I mean, that sketch is absolutely breathtaking to me. And
well,
then of
thank you,
course,
Jason.
you literally made my weekend when you're like, Jason, see this, and it's Sam's Disney Legend statue, and like you're like, no, hold it, and I'm like, I don't want to drop this. Um, but that was the first time I had seen a Disney Legend statue in person and held it. And you think about Disney parks, you think about the stories and the memories. I walk away from this weekend with that really as a key moment for me, just because, again, the history.
Yeah. When Dusty approached Matt, and Matt was like, Vince, it'd be fun if you come with me. I was like, wow, like I couldn't contain my, because again, like I've said, this was my very first D23. Said it correctly. You like that? So I couldn't be more excited. And Matt was like, oh, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, and I was like, I was just so overwhelmed and blown. I like like all this past week, I was like, okay, I can't wait. I just can't wait. I just can't wait. And then you get there and it's just like, wow, colors and toys and people, and you turn around and like you said, I ran into John Favreau. I walked away for a minute, and I'm standing there waiting to talk to Bob Olszewski, and I turn around, there's John Favreau, and I'm like, hey, I love Swingers. That was the first movie that he was in, as far as I can remember. And he's like, oh, thanks, I really appreciate it, and just these interactions that you have with people, but I
Yeah,
got to
they're all
tell you,
moments.
yeah, everybody knows Matt. Everybody, Matt, and he'll say
Not
no,
everybody.
no, but
Not
Matt,
everybody.
everybody walks up and they go, "Oh, I came to see Matt. Where's Matt? Is Matt here?" I mean,
I have to say, maybe I shouldn't say, but when you were getting Josh tomorrow to sign your book,
oh
and
yeah,
your pen didn't work,
yeah,
and so I handed you a pen that worked, and you said, "Well, of course you know Matt McKim, right?" As he's taking the pen from me, and I'm thinking, his expression was a little off,
yeah,
and I've only been around him a couple of times,
yeah,
introduced, and then I've been around him a couple of times, and I started thinking afterwards, he was probably looking beyond me at one point, and he saw Mice Chat, and he's
oh yeah.
thinking, "Oh my gosh, I wonder if he's from Mice Chat. I don't remember meeting with Matt with Mice Chat. Was he critical of what I'm doing right now?" And I was thinking, I wonder if that was what his kind of off expression was a little bit. So,
Well,
anyways,
no, he was putting two and two together, because
I think he was. I think he was. So
I saw the eye contact,
yeah,
because what happened, Jason, was, again, like Matt said, I gave him a pin, and he's like, oh, this isn't really working. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's how embarrassing to get somebody to sign your book and your pin's not working. And then Matt goes, oh, here. And he looks up and he sees Mice Chat, but he looks over and he sees Matt's trophy. He sees the Legends trophy.
well, my
And
dad.
he's trying to put two and two together, and he goes, and so, is
Well,
Matt a legend? Is Matt a legend?
So Josh, if you're ever seeing this, that's my dad's trophy, not mine. I was an Imagineer. I've seen you many times backstage. We've said hello.
Yeah.
So, there you go. On the
It's
record.
funny. Yeah, on the record. It was funny because you weren't there, Jason. You weren't there, but Haley Claire was there. And for those that don't know Haley Claire, that's Harriet Burns' granddaughter. And we're talking, and again, there's so many people just walking by, and I look up and I go, I think that's Leslie Iwerks. And Leslie walks up, and Haley goes, oh, hi, and it's just, it's surreal. All these people that have been so formidable, for Disney over, I mean, here I'm standing next to Matt, who, in my mind is just the superstar, and you got Leslie, and you got all these people. I know Matt, Mr. Humility, Mr. Humble, but you know what? And it's neat because these are all people that help shape our lives in Disney and what we see. So it's a lot of fun. I mean, there's so many different things, so I enjoyed it. I had a blast.
I agree, and I will say, having met Matt for the first time as well in person, I agree with you. The humbleness, just down to earth,
Yeah.
very just, but yet you're right. He knows everybody, and I think it's fascinating to me because the approachability. He must give off that aura. He's like, listen, not only do I have an approachable personality, but I also have pens that work. This is the narrative that we're gonna.
Well, I tell you, I was gonna have Sharpies available, and because I'm taking care of my mom, I'm not at my house. So I went out to my dad's studio, and I was gonna look for some Sharpies, right? And then I stopped myself and said, you know what? He's been gone 20 years. Those Sharpies are probably long gone. So turn around and just go back into the house, find another pen.
But like, we talk about these moments, right, that we've all had now over the last 3 days. I mean, and I got to tell you, like, even seeing Margaret
Oh yeah.
And like, right? Like
Talk about a
people
humble person. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
humble, but yet all the energy. I mean, like I saw her in passing on one of my trips past her booth, and she's out there with somebody doing the Tinkerbell like dance. And I'm like, and again, it's just like that humble humility of just like she, and most people, if you ask them like Margaret who, they wouldn't recognize like, oh, that's the connection with Tinkerbell.
Yes. Yes.
So it was just like, again, you start to see these moments throughout the weekend.
And
That
Margaret had fractured her hip not long ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and I'm like, and you
there's
flew across country?
yes.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
at her age. At her age, she's
Yes.
how old is she? She is what?
95.
89. She's
95.
95.
Yes.
Wow.
She bounced back, and I think it's because she was a dancer and very active, and she's petite.
Yeah.
So she was able to bounce back. But she's got such life in her and such drive that it's just an amazing little powerhouse, but very humble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
go ahead, Maddie.
I was just going to say, someone Michael is Roman is just talking about the highlight was Haley Mills and Leslie Ann Warren, and for the Sherman brothers, and I'm sorry I missed that. I have not met Haley Mills or Ann Warren, but should I mention?
Yeah.
Should I say it, Vince?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So we're going to try to get Haley Mills on the podcast here before too long. And I came across a photo. I was going through some photos for something else, and I find one of the D23 award gatherings, and it's a photograph of my parents, my mom and my dad, with Haley Mills.
Yeah.
And I think, oh my gosh, I should make a copy of this and send it to her and ask her if she would sign it to my mom, who's 97 now, and then I thought, okay, my brother had met her at the studio when he was working in art props. This is a fun story. I should be having my brother tell you the story, and eventually we'll have him tell you the story.
Yeah.
But in a nutshell, he was working in art props. He was, out of high school, going through college before he got into animation. And art props was kind of a wacky location with wacky people. And so somebody had found, and this would have been, we'll have to ask Brian, but I believe it was probably the late 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody had found a stack of Haley Mills headshots. And so these guys started signing them to each other. To Brian, you're such a cute little love bug or whatever. Love, Haley Mills, something to that extent. So they're writing all of these to each other, and they pin them up inside art props, right? And Haley Mills, I don't know how much longer after they put these up, Haley Mills comes through, and she says, "Hey guys, can I use your phone?" They're like, "Yeah, it's over there on the wall or whatever." So she's on the phone, and she starts looking around, and she sees these photos with her signature on them, and she's looking, and she gets off the phone, and she goes, "I didn't sign those." And so all the guys start busting up laughing, and they explain the story to them. Well, they find the rest of these headshots. They pull them out, and they say, "Well, Haley, would you mind signing these for us?" So my brother's got one from Haley Mills. But I thought I would share that in the letter with this photograph that I'm going to send to her.
She's going to love that.
And then ask her if she would mind doing a podcast with us. And I hear she's just a charming, delightful lady. So let's hope she says yes.
Yeah, she will. I can't imagine why she would. I mean,
right.
Her doing the panel yesterday. I mean, everybody just was. Michael Roman was nice enough to invite us.
Yes,
and we couldn't get away. And Michael, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for that offer. I'm sorry we couldn't take it.
It was amazing. Yeah. And say hello to your mother for us, Michael. But it was something I was so excited to go see. And when we didn't get to go, I was like, all right, you know what, I get, we got to do this. But I mean, everybody, and everybody is so generous and so nice. Everybody that you just come across, the Disney family, people
Yes.
exchanging pens and giving things to each other and just sharing and buying books and giving stickers. I couldn't be happier with everybody. Most amazing community. And I love how everybody just comes together. It's so much fun. I mean, you guys see it on an everyday basis. I see it, and I just I can't thank everybody, and Dusty Sage with Mice Chat for having us.
Yes.
And
Thank you,
I
Dusty.
mean, yeah, you
That
know,
was very, very kind of you.
yeah,
I'm
Dusty, thank
exhausted
you.
because of it, but
Yeah,
it was well worth it.
yeah,
And I have to say that, meeting people was you know, encouraging and energizing. And just some of the people, that I knew of or had met or never met,
yeah,
and how much they reached out,
yeah,
looking at what I had brought, making comments, and then being excited about what we're planning to do, but also um, very supportive in so many different ways. And HHA, talking about helping us archive my dad's things. And uh,
Didier,
it's
yeah,
just, yeah. And, Tom Morris
yeah,
being very supportive on everything. And, um, I love sharing this stuff with people, but it's
yeah,
also nice to know that people care about archiving it and being able to continue to take care of it, to be able to continue to share it.
yeah. Jason, did you get over there? Did you see it? The Hyperion Project, Walt Disney and El Grupo in Latin America. Did
That was
you?
the one I asked for as my number 2 on my RSP list, and I got no for that one.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
But but I will share, one thing I like, to add to Michael's point and to the conversation around the kindness of people, because Michael's talking about, gifting tickets to other people helping get him in. I couldn't agree more. I
Yeah,
was sitting in the line getting ready, at like, I don't know, 6:30 in the morning. And on this particular morning, I think it was Saturday, no, it was actually yesterday morning. Um, there was a couple sitting down in the line waiting to get in front of us. And we just started talking about Disney and the expo and everything. And probably 15, 20 minutes later, they were like, oh, well, we're going to try and go to the Cherry Tree Lane panel. I
yeah,
did not have an RSP for that. And they're like, well, we have an extra spot if you'd like to come.
oh,
yeah,
that's
15,
nice.
20 minutes. And all of a sudden, like and so
Old
I
friends.
went to that, and then
yeah,
they were trying to get something. I think they were trying to get like a Roosevelt shirt that morning. And I was like, well, I'm happy to go over and like get the card so that you can come back.
yeah,
And so you're 100% right. Like there's a spirit to all of this that
yeah,
is, to carry forward something that's positive, that's good, with no expectation of anything in
yeah,
return,
yeah,
other than, I boil it down to this, and maybe this makes sense for most, but there's a certain joy that I feel when I do something for somebody else.
yeah,
And that joy that I feel can never be greater if I had kept it to myself. Like if I had
yeah,
done something just for me, right?
yeah,
And that's the spirit of the Disney people that I love. Some of the most biggest hearted, kindest people. I mean, the stories are endless. I mean, whether I'm on a VIP tour in Florida, I've met people who have become friends, and now
yeah,
we talk to each other, and we're like, "Hey, we're going to the parks. Do you want to just go and hang out?" Like, how do you? What more could you possibly ask for in life
yeah,
than? I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot, but Vince, I think you even embodied it yesterday, and it's a perfect example. I turn around, you're talking to the booth next door, and the next thing
David
I know,
Koenig.
you're placing a book in my hand for the about the original 55,
Yeah,
and now all of a sudden I have hundreds of pages to read, about 700 plus members, which I think feels like you're a professor now. But Jason, here's your assignment. Go read. But it's that, again, it's that kind-heartedness that I gravitate towards. And once you do it once, it's a waterfall effect. It just keeps going. So
Yeah. I and I was raised this way. My mom, she used to say the joy and excitement for her at Christmas time was watching our faces, was me and my sister. When you, and I'm sure Matt, with your mom and dad was the same. Jason, I mean, is when you're a kid, all you're thinking about is I want, I want, I want, because you don't know no better. But as an adult, you understand now the smile
yeah,
on people's faces when they see something that just makes their day, something out of nowhere that just makes people happy. That brings you such joy that you can't pay for that. There's no amount of money. So I dig on that. That's the best part of what we do. I think. When you said, "Hey Vince, I'm going to be here at this place. What can I do for you?" And I said, I'm looking for a shirt. Can you grab me a shirt? And boom, it was done. And you had it, and I was just like, wow, you're awesome. I appreciate that so much. So, and again, Matt, the same thing. Matt, it's funny, yesterday we went to go get something to eat, and we always fight about who's going to pay, and this lady goes, "Are you two brothers?" And we go, "Yeah, we're brothers," because it's just, you don't want the other person to pay, and it's just funny now. I mean, it's so much fun. Everybody, the community, everybody. It's just a lot of fun. So
well, you hit
is
on
that.
one thing that I'll highlight just briefly, and that is, you're right. As a kid, it's about the ride, right? Like, oh,
Yeah,
I want to go on this ride, or oh, I want to go on that ride, and ice cream and all of these things. And I remember I was very fortunate as a child. My family took me to Disney often. And it's really where I grew up in many ways. And I can't put my finger on it, but there was a moment in time a few years, probably right before COVID happened. Um, and I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think this stemmed from the fact that my grandmother had said one of the things she did for all the grandchildren was, as we graduated high school, she would take all the grandchildren on a trip anywhere in the world that they wanted to go. They could pick.
wow.
And so, yeah, and it was one on one, just you and her.
Hmm.
Um, Admittedly, I am the only grandchild that did not do a trip.
Really?
Um, yeah, and the reason is, I had graduated, gone off to college, and I got hired very quickly into a full time job. And as I looked back, I had prioritized that over going on this trip, and so I ended up being the only grandchild that didn't go. She passed away. I didn't have that chance, and so I made it a priority to. I remember distinctly. I called my aunt one day and I said, "Hey, guess what?" And she said, "What?" I said, "We're going to Disney." And she's just like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yes, we're going to Disney. Pick. This is the dates. You're going."
Yeah.
Um, and she's like, "Wait, I don't know what I got to do. I got to buy." I said, "No, no, you don't understand. I am paying for you to come to Disney because you have given up so much of your time and your money for me as a child. This is
Yeah.
my way of giving back."
Yeah.
And so I took her there, and I got to tell you, like when you said that, it just resonated with me because I'm like, I remember going to the parks with her. In fact, it's funny. I don't know if you can see it through this, but I actually have a jacket that I got made, and it says nephew on it. She's got one that
Oh,
says aunt.
Aunt.
Um, and and I went to the parks and I lived through her. I lived
Yeah.
through the fact that she remembered some things, but the parks have evolved. There
Yeah.
were things that she had not done or experienced. And I remembered the funniest thing is I have a photo, and Vince, after this, I'll have to find it and send it to you. But one
Yeah.
of the last things, Matt, that we would always do at Disney World is we would ride the Speedway. Probably because it was like right there at the end of the night. We were all tired, but primarily also because we could never keep the car straight. And I remember And I remembered we were getting ready to go. She was exhausted. And I said, oh, we have one more ride to do. And so we did this ride. We got on the speedway. And there's a photo of us as we're pulling back into the bay after having run it. And we are both laughing so hard that we're crying. And I remember it. And that's the moment that I take away from that trip, is that, again, the joy you can give. And so I say that to say, you know, if you're out there, if you're listening, if you're thinking about something, you know, prioritize the things that matter most. Prioritize family, because, you know, I made that mistake once, and I was darned if I was going to let that happen again.
Yeah,
Well,
that's and
I
that
don't know
makes
if I don't know if I shared this story with you, but so I had worked on Euro Disneyland Paris, and I was over there for about 2 years for installation, and I was being sent home early to start working on Second Gate France, which was the first version of that got shelved under the MGM, Disney MGM title.
Yeah.
So anyways, I got sent home early, but I thought, you know, I had given how many years, you know, 5 years of my life to this project, and it was my first big one with WDI. So I thought, you know what, darn it, I'm going to go back on my own nickel for opening day. I'm going to go back. So I flew in. I stayed with friends in town, and I went into the park for opening day. And so the first thing I did after the ceremony was I hopped on the train on Main Street.
Uh-huh.
And there was a French family there sitting near me. And so mother, father, and then 2 teenage kids. So there was a boy and a girl, young teenage. And so anyways, we go through the dioramas, you know, and so we're getting ready to come out of the tunnel. And as we came out the tunnel, and you could see Rivers of America with the Mark Twain coming around, blowing its whistle, and then Big Thunder on the island in the middle, and Frontierland there. It made every day of my 5 years working on that project to see their faces, and all 4 of them, their mouth was open.
Really?
And they were just, their eyes were huge, and they were just taking it all in, you know.
Yeah.
This is what we had done, you know, something special for France. And you know, this was the first park in Europe.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if this family had ever been to Disneyland or Walt Disney World or Tokyo Disneyland.
Yeah.
But it was like their first day at a Disney park.
Yeah.
And just to see their expression, I mean, it almost brought tears to my eyes. It was
Really?
like, this is why I do what I do.
It had to have been surreal to know.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this
yeah.
is something you built. This is something, and to see your creation come to life, and to see these people, the joy in their faces.
Yeah.
You can't buy that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you can't. I attribute, you know, the first time I went to Dodger Stadium, the look in my face. The first time you see Disneyland, the look in, you know, just it's no amount of money, and now people take so many pictures and cameras that you miss the moment, because, you know, you're taking that picture.
Yeah.
You know, you've got the picture, but the real actual moment is worth just as much as that picture.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, I mean, that's, to me, that's beautiful. You know, I mean, to have that, you're going to take that memory with you the rest of your life.
Oh, sure.
You know, that's amazing. But
absolutely.
Now you're going to make me bring out the photo that my grandmother always talked to me about when I was a young kid. She always said at one point, the first time I met Mickey, I guess I had grabbed, I don't remember this, to be clear, but I know that she's got, but there's a photo of me, and I'm holding on to Mickey's hand with both hands. And I guess I was done with talking to Mickey, but I refused to let go of his finger. And so Mickey kept trying to like pull his finger away and stuff. And you know, it's like, no, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, you're not leaving me. Sorry.
You're stuck. But you know, but Matt, you bring up an interesting point, because, you know, I have friends just like, you guys that are planning to go to these parks for the first time or going for the second or third time. And the one thing that I sort of see, and I don't know if you guys feel it as well, is that there's an inordinate amount of stress planning a trip to these parks.
Mm.
Yes.
And I wonder what I always tell people, and I wonder what you guys are telling them too. I'm like, guys, you can plan the best you can, but it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to
No.
be what you expect it to be. It's not going to be the way you planned it to be.
Yeah.
And yet, if you step back from all of that, that moment on the train, that moment when they turn the corner and they see something, it is those unexpected moments that if you allow yourself to just kind of be like, okay, I'm not in control, I'm just going to let it be, right? I mean, it's the same way. Like I, um, I have usually small little items that I will give to cast members, right? As I go around the parks, whether it's
Yeah.
small pins or things that I've designed or things like that. And the powerful emotional reaction of something so small, right? So something is so small as what you just talked about, like that moment they come over and they see something that they didn't expect. The moment that a cast member I give, a small little token of appreciation to, it just it wells up. They'll give you, they'll be like, "Can I give you a hug?" Like, how do
Yeah.
you replace those moments? Because those don't
Yeah.
happen outside of the parks.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to give people a challenge here. So the next time you go into one of the Disney parks, don't be in just such a rush to be rushing down Main Street or whatever to go to the first attraction. Just stop and walk and take a look at things. Look at
Yeah.
something you've never looked at before or something you've looked at 1,000 times, but look at
Yeah.
it differently with a
Yeah.
different perspective. And maybe that perspective is, okay, this is a piece that's been in the park since 1955.
Yeah.
But think about where it's placed, what its scale of its size or whatever, what the color of it is. Why was it placed there?
Yeah.
Why is it that color?
Yeah.
Just stop and look at things. And I give you that challenge.
Yeah.
I had and I've told you this story, Vince. I have a good friend of mine that we started out in kindergarten together, and I had known him for so many years. And we went into the park, just the two of us. His family got jealous afterwards, but we got into the park, and he goes, "Okay, let's go over to Indy or whatever." And I said, "Wait, Robin, let's just take a breather here. Now let's look down Main Street. Now you see how the street it actually narrows down towards the castle a little bit. This is the forced perspective that Walt was doing, and I started explaining some of this stuff, and he's like, "Wow, I've never noticed that," And we'd walk and one of the things that I like to do is about 3/4 of the way down on the right hand side, you've got the little steps that go up to the porch, and there's a couple of chairs up there.
Yeah.
And I love to go get an ice cream across the way and then go and sit and then just people watch. And
Yeah.
I love to watch, the different ages and such, taking all of this stuff in. And you can tell who the first comers are, the first
Yeah.
timers.
Yeah.
And you can tell the people that have been there all the time that are trying to get in as many of the attractions as they can, get their money's worth.
Yeah.
And that's fine. And I get it. I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as you're saying, Jason, about some of these experiences, it's not all about getting on every attraction to get your money's worth. It's those special little times to just kind of sit, take a breather, people watch, meet somebody in line, have a
Yeah.
conversation, look at the plants, try to figure out why they planted that plant or whatever, and have a discussion with your friends or your family about all of this stuff, things that
Yeah.
you've never noticed before, and have a discussion about it.
Yeah.
Um, and if you're going to be staring at your phone, at least Google something that has to do with what you're staring at in the queue line, so you
Yeah.
learn a little history.
Yeah.
Because all of these Imagineers did a lot of research to create this stuff, and they didn't
Yeah.
just pull it out of thin air. There
Yeah.
was research that went into it. So there's history beyond even Disney of why
Yeah.
things are done a certain way.
Yeah.
So I give people that challenge to just
I
kind
like
of take a little bit longer to get down Main Street or get through Adventureland or Tomorrowland and
yeah,
take a look at things a little bit more in detail and have a discussion with the people, or even if you're there alone, have a discussion with yourself.
yeah,
There are a lot of treasures there
yeah,
that if you stop and spend the time, and I'll say that if you have this conversation with your family or friends, um, you're going to have a different experience in the park,
yeah,
and hopefully some more treasured experiences.
yeah. You know,
It's funny you
I've heard.
mentioned that. I go down. I go more towards Disney World, obviously, just because of my proximity to it. But and we're annual pass holders, and there is something to be said because I was that guy, right, Matt? I was the guy that was like, I'm gonna go down there. I'm gonna get up at 7 a.m. I'm gonna rope drop. I'm going all the way through. No, we're staying past fireworks through the extra hours, right?
Sure.
And as my wife and I have gone down there more and more, and again, we are very lucky in this sense, but we've kind of gotten to the point where people are like, what do you do different? And I'm like, every single time is different. And I have two different quick stories I'll share on that. One is more recently, within the past 6 months, we went down there and it was very quiet at the Haunted Mansion that night. And so we kept wondering, like, we know roughly where the photo gets taken for the ride attraction, but we were like, but really, like, where exactly is it? Like, we figured it out, but then we were trying to figure out eye level height. So we just rode that same ride like 7 times. And then once we figured it out, we were just posing like different ways every time we did this. And we put them together. The next trip we went down, I realized, and I'm going to open Pandora's box here, but at least in Florida, the various colored monorails. I remember the time when you could ride up in front of them.
Yeah,
Yes.
And whilst they don't allow that now, if you ask the driver nicely, and if it's not busy, don't do it when it's busy. But they will let you take a photo in the cockpit.
yeah,
And this happened out of happenstance because I was talking to my wife about how I love the monorails. And she was like, well, what color? And I was like, oh my gosh, I love monorail blue. And a cast member happened to have overheard it, mentioned it to the pilot, and the pilot had said, hey, why don't you come up here and take a photo in the cockpit? And it became this thing where the rest of the trip, I was just like, oh my gosh, every different, could I possibly get a photo of every single cockpit that I'm in across the line? But then that transitions to a more serious one, which is to your point, Matt, about some of the details, like the windows, right? We talk about the windows on Main Street. And I would say 95% of people walk up Main Street, look at them, and they go, "Oh, there's windows," but you don't read the stories, the names, or uh,
Descriptions.
creative titles,
systems. Yeah,
that go into it. And so it's funny, Vince. This is going to resonate probably with you because I think I told you about this before it happened. But I had randomly had a conversation with Tom Nab,
yeah,
and I said, "Gosh, I'm coming down, to Florida. I would love to take you and your wife out to dinner and just, talk to you." And so him and his wife and my wife and I, we all met for dinner at Disney Springs. We had a wonderful conversation. But that moment, the next day when I went to the parks, I found his window
yeah,
and I looked at it and not just glanced, like I stood there and I looked at it and then I recalled my meeting him and the stories he shared. And again, people are like, well, why do you go to Disney? What's different every time? And I'm like, this is what's different, right? And
yeah,
nothing about this is the same every trip.
yeah,
It's just you see things differently, you play a game differently, you walk the street differently, you explore the parks differently. Or my favorite was more recently, I realized that the what I thought was real roofing on the tiki room is actually just very creative metal.
metal,
Yes.
metal.
Right?
Yeah,
But again, it all connects back. So to kind of pull this to D23 for a second, um, I'm standing with both of you guys, and then immediately to your right is none other than Garner Holt and his
yeah,
table.
Yeah.
And, right prominently on that table is an animatronic bird
Yeah.
that, most people probably don't even know garners history and backstory toward, the animatronic world. But probably most people don't know you could go and take a week long class and learn about animatronics. You can build your own animatronic bird, right? Like,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
many like these are the stories and things that evolve far greater than the rides and the food, so to speak,
Yeah.
or the stresses of standing in a 45-50 minute wait for a ride.
See, okay, I'm glad you brought that up because that's going to lead me to a subject that, for those that are watching, forgive me, I'm bringing this up because it's controversial. I posted about this the other day. Dean Balladad sent a video, and I believe you were there, Jason. They talked about an animatronic Walt Disney. My 2 cents, all that I've ever seen, Walt has done so much. There's so much video, everything that he's done. I've tried to absorb every bit of Walt, everything that he's ever talked about, said. But now you want to do an animatronic. My 2 cents, I don't think it should be done. I know Diane was against it. I know Joanne's against is against it. And I get the reasoning why. I really, really do. And most of the people on my post were against it. I had a few snarky comments about, well, did you know him? Well, no, I didn't, but I've talked to enough people that did know him, and he really did. He didn't even want a statue of himself. So, Matt, I know you've got strong feelings about this as well, right?
I do. I'll talk a little bit about it, and then I'm going to let it go.
Okay.
But yeah, my dad talked about it actually,
Yeah.
and I to be honest with you, I don't know if he heard it from Walt himself. I believe he did, but
Yeah.
I don't know that for sure.
Okay.
But Walt Disney himself was very much against having an AA figure of himself. He
Yeah.
was very much against it.
Yeah.
I don't know about the statue part. I've never heard
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But my dad had mentioned that Walt did not want an AA figure of himself,
Yeah.
and he was very adamant about it. My dad said.
Yeah.
So, I'm with Joanna on this.
Yeah.
So, as a retired Imagineer, I know they would do an amazing job
Yeah.
of creating Walt as an AA figure, putting him in an amazing environment, saying amazing things, and creating amazing emotions for people.
Correct.
I know
Correct.
that. I
Yeah.
know it would be spectacular. But I go back to this is of the creator of the company, and his wishes were not to have one.
Yeah.
So for me, and because of my ties and my father's ties, and hearing from him, my feeling is I would override how wonderful that would be to honoring Walt and his
Yeah.
feelings. So, you know, I'm not necessarily riding that fence,
Yeah.
but I will say I know it would be spectacular.
Sure.
I know the Imagineers would do an amazing job.
Correct.
But if I were in that position to be making the decision, I wouldn't do it. I would
Yeah.
honor Walt's feelings and wants and nots.
Yeah.
So
I
that's my 2 cents.
you know, I believe it was David Skipper. David, you're here with us. I believe it was David Skipper that said they will be able to have Walt say anything they want
Mm,
that 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 Disney wants him to say. Not
right.
his exact words. So that's kind of, there's a gray area there. And I understand this is the creator, you know, but there is so much out there that you could just have a video of him running 24/7, of him talking, all the things that he's chronics, just his real voice. But I know it's a sore subject, and I saw the people get excited about it, but it just I don't think it should be done at all.
Well, I'll respond to something you just said, which is they can make him say anything they wanted to, which
Yeah.
I would hope they wouldn't,
Yes.
because so when they did Lincoln and when they did the Hall of Presidents, and my dad was the art director on the Hall of Presidents, right? For Lincoln,
Yeah.
he was doing the paintings and the pre-show
Yeah.
paintings.
Yeah.
But and as I said, Imagineers will do all this research, right?
Yeah.
So everything that Lincoln says, he said.
Yeah.
All the things the presidents say, the ones that speak, are the words that they spoke.
Correct.
Nobody's changing their words, at least to
Correct.
this point.
Yeah.
No one is changing their words. All of that stuff is researched, speeches and everything else. Of course, the presidents that were alive when they were doing this, they could actually speak to and get approvals and such. But
Correct.
so I would say, you've got to be careful, especially with AI these days. You've got to be careful about what words you're putting into a historical figure.
Yeah.
You can't alter that stuff.
Yeah. And you see so much of it with AI. You see a lot of AI out there.
Sure.
They're beautiful, and people are, things are so touching. So it's almost to the point, is that real? Is it AI? And,
Vince, I have a question for you then. Are you AI?
He's not, but I am.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what's funny is I've got friends on both sides of the aisle, but my personal belief, and I'm sorry, people are probably I'm gonna get messages, I'm sure, but AI to me is just not something. You're taking the hands away from the creative people, the Willie Itos, the Rick Farmelo, the Floyd Norman. You're taking the people's sweat and years of drawing, and all of a sudden it's just it's a Jurassic Park kind of thing. All of a sudden you have jumped light years ahead, and you're doing this without the people that actually started it. So the animatronic thing, it's scary, and I get the need for the technology. It's amazing, it's incredible, but I don't see the need for. And again, I understand the history. People are losing the history aspect of Disney. You and I have talked about this many, many times, Matt. It's dissipating at an alarming rate. People are starting to believe that Walt wasn't real, that he was just a name. So I don't know if this is Disney's way of trying to bring it back, but you have a pavilion or something that is just family, Disney family, Miller family, things like that would just bring people in so they can learn the history aspect.
Sure.
You don't need an AI. You don't need animatronics.
I'll tell you about AI though, just in general.
Okay.
And this goes for anything technology. I remember when CAD, computer aided design, was coming into Imagineering.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times architects and such, were upset about it. Oh, this is ridiculous, and I can draw faster and I can do this. Okay. I realized, and AI is like this. AI should be, you got to be cautious because it can run rampant and you can do the wrong things with it.
Yes.
But it needs to be looked at as a tool. A tool in your toolbox.
Yes.
And when do you pull that tool out to use it? When does it make sense? When can it enhance something? Right? Without just destroying it. Because you could reach into your toolbox and you can pull a screwdriver out and you can hammer a nail into a piece of wood with a screwdriver. It's possible. Yeah. But is it the right thing to do? Is that the right tool to pull out to put a nail into a piece of board? No, the hammer is. So with AI, when you're reaching for AI, what are you using that for? How is that going to enhance what you're doing? And how are you being responsible with it?
Yeah.
So just in general, I'm not even talking Disney. Just in general, the AI tool can be a good thing. It's just like the internet.
Yeah.
It can be a nasty place if it's not handled properly and it's abused, right?
Yeah.
Same
Yeah.
thing with AI. AI can be a wonderful thing
Yeah.
if it's
But
used properly.
if it's
It's a
used
tool.
properly. Yeah.
Well, that's
Jason,
and that's why
you,
for me, I like the purest part of some of it. Like, again, even like the Cars Expo or the Cars section at the Expo.
yeah.
And I only know that because I was talking to Joanna, and I was like, wait, the '64 Mercedes still exists?
Oh, yeah.
And she had said to me, not only does it exist, but I'm bringing my grandpa's Mercedes to the expo. And while it's currently in a red fashion of color, I think there's an appetite that she wants to bring it back to the original color, which is like a gray cream.
Yeah.
And that, like, again, I just stood in front of that car and I was like, wow, this is like this is not animatronic. This is real. It's sitting here right in front of me. I could almost reach out and touch it, although the sign said do not touch. Um, but it's those types of things, right? And I know she spent an inordinate amount of time saving and preserving Uncle Robert's house.
Yes.
And quite frankly, restoring it more recently to its beauty.
Yes.
And I love the fact that there are those efforts going on, where people who go to these expos could see that car, can see some of the other cars, like the Pizza Planet truck or the 18 car or the Herbie car, but
Yeah.
preserving it. And there are efforts around the country that are doing that. I mean, there's a group of hardworking people working to restore and save Walt's Chicago birthplace home. Which is beautiful, because I don't know if people know it, but the staircase inside that house is still very much original. And I remember I was talking to the coordinators of that project, and they said that while they were doing some renovation of the floorboards in the upstairs bedroom where they believe Walt was born, they found a box in the floor with papers in it.
Oh, wow.
That went back beyond even Walt's parents.
Huh.
So I thought that was fascinating, and I think it brings up this sort of delicate balance of the idea that everything is sort of slowly emerging, yet we hold on to the past. And how do
Yeah.
we find that balance, right? Walt talked about it extensively. I think the parks try, and I think this is a really, really hard thing to do. How do you continue to grow the parks to be modern and relevant to the new, younger audience that they seek, whilst maintaining the nostalgia of the parks? And one of the things that, and I think one of the commenters had talked about earlier, one of the panels, one of the other panels on the Sherman Brothers and sort of celebrating their life, one of the things that dropped in that is this beautiful video of Bob Iger sitting with Richard Sherman just last year, and despite a clearly raspy voice, you see and hear Richard, who unveiled to Bob a brand new third verse to "It's a Small World."
Oh,
A
yeah.
timeless classic song that we all know and love, but yet now with a third verse that modernizes it, that speaks to it. And so when I got home, or when I was flying home, I actually looked up, like, what was the words of that third verse? And it's interesting, because that part speaks to, he says, Mother Earth unites us in heart and mind, and the love that we give makes us humankind. Through our vast and wondrous land, when we stand hand in hand, it's a small world after all. And again, I think that's just a perfect sort of element where, when done correctly, things can absolutely be advanced. How, Matt, to your point, we advance, I think, is the question. And how do we do that with honor, with integrity, with respectfulness along the way?
There's a responsibility that goes with that.
Yeah.
You can't ignore it. I mean, you can, but damage is done. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm of the belief that, and again, they had a Disney family member. Okay. But it wasn't Joanna, and it wasn't her brother, and it wasn't Joanne's sons. So, they said they worked closely with the family. I get there's a little that's true, but it may be tweaked a little bit. I don't want to ruffle any feathers, but again, it's one of those things. I think public opinion, Tiana's ride, things like that. You know, you kind of want to listen to the dominant, the people that are spending the money, that are going to the parks, that are, you kind of put things out there. And I get that they're cutting edge. They're going to do what they're going to do. And the shock value of what we're opening and things like that, and people love that. But, lately it hasn't been the best of times for them. So, I get that they're trying to bring people back, but it's scary right now. Everything is, it's that balance. How do you balance that out? So hopefully it gets worked out, and, hopefully they decide, okay, we're going to go in a different direction.
Hmm.
Well, so I have a question then, Vince, for you. Like, speaking of directions and the parks, I mean, much of the Parks and Experiences night at the Honda Center, Josh talked a lot about expansion of the parks. Paris, Tokyo, Disneyland and Disney World. They're all getting not just updates, they're getting net new shovel in the dirt. And it's interesting because I think going into this, there was a lot of press around the fact that, like, there's this pent up demand by the base of loyalists of Disney World and the parks and Disneyland parks that, it was interesting to me that Josh came out and he's like, look, we're not talking blue sky tonight. We're talking shovel in the ground. Because I think they sort of felt that pressure of, gosh, people really want something new. We've got the land, and what are we going to do? So I guess my question to you is, of all the stuff that they've announced that they're going to build, what's the thing that jumps out at you that you're like most excited about?
And it's funny because I looked over this probably 3 or 4 times today, and there's so many things, I'm excited about a few. Big Coco guy, so I'm excited about that. But I think for me, I love the idea of all the fill-ins, but again, I think me and Matt talked about this, in Florida, the heat, I mean, is that the right idea? But, I mean, I think the concept is great on most everything. I don't know how big Avatar is going to be. I was curious about that. The Avatar thing, the last one, not as big as the first one, So, I mean, do you still go with that? Is that third movie going to be just as big? And a lot of people are going, really? Avatar at Disneyland, at DCA? I mean, so, you just kind of, it's a wait and see kind of thing. Matt, you're an Imagineer. What did you get a chance to look at everything that they are talking about doing and what they want to do?
I saw a lot of it. I can't say I filtered through everything yet. But and the interesting thing is, even if they duplicate things, it's not duplicated completely. Usually, there are tweaks and changes. Sometimes it's a creative decision, sometimes it's a financial decision that they make. So I don't, and I worked on theme lighting for Avatar in DAC in Animal Kingdom. So I'm familiar with that one. I have no idea what they're planning for this one. I haven't delved into to see.
I think I am most excited about one of the new monster rides going in at Hollywood Studios, just because of it's a whole new system.
Yes.
It's a sort of a new, because Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind introduced the Omni Coaster. So here, sort of seeing that as another net new, innovative sort of ride system is exciting. I mean, look, I'll be the first one to tell you, I had very high hopes and probably misguided, but I was like, please just bring Zootopia Land to Animal Kingdom. Like, I mean, just give me Judy Hobbs and bring it on, right?
Yeah.
I'm all for the hustle,
Yeah.
and I was I want the little redwood popsicles, but I think that's an area that I was like, okay, that's one. And then maybe again my naivete, but I was really really looking forward to the possibility that they were going to eventually bring back plans at Epcot to overhaul Spaceship Earth. What are they going to do with Figment? That's an area that has a loyal base, but the ride needs its sort of attention.
Yeah.
And I was very disappointed when Mary Poppins sort of land was announced and then sort of wasn't canceled, but just hasn't really materialized.
Yeah.
So I was really kind of hoping like, oh, and then look, I'm very excited about a Spaceship Lounge, but I'm like, can we talk Cherry Tree Lane for a second again? So I think that there's those aspects of it. Look, Cars Land going in out back of Magic Kingdom. I kind of get it. I mean, it makes sense to me. Do I think that they need to take out Rivers of America and Florida to do it? I wouldn't have thought that, but that's what's happening. The permits are filed.
Yeah.
So, but here's the question that I pose, and Matt, maybe you have some insight on this, but like one of the first things I thought of when they announced Monsters Inc. Land going into Hollywood Studios is, well, wait a second. If I think about Magic Kingdom, Tomorrowland has the Monster Inc. laugh floor, and then right across the way they've got the open, housing for what was the old Stitch ride. Like to me, I feel like Tomorrowland is the next area that is probably due for
an overhaul,
a complete overhaul.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Matt.
Well, I was just going to say, Tomorrowland has always been one of those lands that has been difficult to redesign. Because how do you do that? In 1955, when Walt was doing it, things were not moving as quickly. But you could get companies that would say, okay, we'll sponsor this, and we're going to show our technology and such, and it would be updated every year or whatever it was. But today, how do you do that? How do you keep up with technology when it's moving so quickly, and without losing an audience?
Yeah.
So, Imagineers would start thinking, okay, do we look at Tomorrowland as the future view from the past, kind of a Jules Verne look, which is direction that Paris went. But how do you deal with that? How do you entertain? How do you educate and keep the thought of the future in the guest's mind as they're going through Tomorrowland? Because you're calling it Tomorrowland. It's tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's not Todayland.
Yeah.
So how do you relate to that? How do you do it? It's not an easy thing to do. And that's why it's been so difficult for Disney to keep up with it.
Yeah.
And I haven't been in blue sky sessions, talking about Tomorrowland necessarily, other than just, with other Imagineers per se, but on an official level, I've not. So I don't know a lot of these discussions that have been made through the years, but boy, is that a land that's difficult to do properly in today's day and age.
Yeah.
Not easy thing,
Yeah. How far do you try to go into the future? Because everything is obsolete so fast.
Right.
And how far do you try to go? What's your thinking? How far does your imagination take you?
Right.
Well, I can tell you that, Vince, you have to go back and thank the Phoenicians.
Exactly. Exactly. The Atlanteans might have some kind of idea, but other than that, I'm not sure.
There you go. You just came up with the concept for subs.
Yeah, there you go, right there. You know, there's so many movies that they've done that have been, I feel like they were neglected, but as far as attractions and things like that. But hopefully, there's I love the idea though of the Monsters Inc. I love that one. I thank you for Jason for that, because that's going to be fun. I love that. But again, I mean, how many times are things going to get shelved? Are these concepts? Are they reality? Are they going to be reality? Is it, like you said, are they throwing shovels in the ground? What's happening? Is
Well,
it going to come to light?
and you made me think about. I had an opinion when Alien Encounter went into Tomorrowland
Uh
in
huh.
Florida,
Yeah.
and I loved that attraction. I thought that was amazing, and it was very Hitchcock to me, and I love Hitchcock
Yeah.
because they weren't showing you everything,
Yeah.
but you knew what was going on, and you
Yeah.
could put the pieces together, and in that sense, you could have a multi-level to a certain degree, a
Yeah.
multi-level age group that could go in and experience it differently,
Yeah.
depending on what age group that person was. They're putting the pieces together. They put it together for their age group. You know what I mean? It could get a little
Yeah.
bit gorier as you were a teenager and an adult, but for a kid, they might not put all of that together like that. But I was a little disappointed that it was put in the Magic Kingdom. That should have gone over to the studio.
Oh,
That was a
okay.
better location to put it in.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why. Because I experienced something in the queue line one day where I saw a teenage sister with a younger brother. And this little boy did not want to go in there. And I don't know if he had experienced it before or not, but he was almost literally in tears. And she was
Really?
pulling him along, forcing him to go on this ride, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the parents weren't there. So here's the thing. The Magic Kingdom is one of those safe parks, right? The parents can
Yes.
say, you guys run off, have fun, take care of your little brother, and we'll meet back here for lunch at blah, blah, blah time and this location. And everything's cool. You don't have to worry
Yeah.
about it. But now they put Alien Encounter in the Magic Kingdom, and it's a PG-13 attraction. So the sister is going to want to have fun and scare the pants off the little brother who's a pest, right? And the parents
Yeah.
have no clue what's going on.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
I
you can
get
have an attraction, but you have to really think these things out to really figure out what's the best location to put it in.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think Alien Encounter, multi levels of why it didn't exist beyond the years that it did. But I think one of the problems was it was a PG-13 attraction.
Okay.
It shouldn't have been in the Magic Kingdom,
Yeah.
my opinion.
Okay.
So,
You
so
know,
what's the consensus then on updating Smuggler's Run to include Mandalorian?
Oh,
how how far are they how far do you take Mandalorian? How
yeah.
far do you take it? Where does it go? I mean, like everything else, it's been watered down. People are you see the I'm a huge Star Wars guy. Empire, Return of the Jedi. Those three, that's my core. That's who I am. I was raised with that. Most of us here were raised with that. The new stuff is kind of convoluted. It's watered down, because I think George was shrewd. I think George, they're going to go back to George in the next few years and go, can you please help us? Can you
Yeah.
please help us? Sure, for $1 billion. So, I firmly believe that, because that land has been neglected so horribly. They could have done so much with it, but it just, I mean, it's, but that's just my, 2 cents, my
Well,
opinion.
I will say the one thing that we did not hear at D23 was anything about the Galactic Star Cruiser, which I think there was a lot of speculation going into
Yes.
it. Like,
Yeah.
oh, it could be turned into a regular hotel. Oh, it could become, like there's a lot of speculation out there about, if not that, a desire to have a Star Wars themed sit
Yeah.
down restaurant.
Yes.
None of that came out of that, and I think that might be surprising to some folks. But
Yeah.
I'm in favor of all of those. I
Oh
mean, sure,
yeah.
would I take a third e-ticket ride there? Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm
I
also a little bit surprised we didn't see the Omni Coaster track system moved somewhere else either. I thought
Mhm.
I mean, because Matt, you talked about this. It's like a lot of things can be repurposed but used differently,
Right.
yeah.
and that's something that Disney does very well at.
Yeah.
Tron was a great example of that, bringing that from the international parks into the domestic. And I thought for sure, I was like, okay, well, a year in, and I personally, maybe I'm just crazy, but like I personally believe like Cosmic Rewind, I love that ride. It
Yeah.
does seem to be a little bit divisive. You either love it or you hate it.
Yeah.
And that generally has to deal with either, people that have motion sickness or vertigo, and I get it. But the ride system is quite powerful and
Oh yeah.
in the experience that it can deliver. And I thought, wow, this is going to end up in California, or this is going to end up in Tokyo. And I didn't hear that, and I was like, wow, that's really interesting, because now it's like, well, then we're going to wait probably at least 2 years.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
to your point, the amount of money and the research and development and everything that went into that system
Sure.
certainly was surprising to me.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure it's going to be used again. And as
Oh
far
yeah.
as the Star Wars hotel, I worked on a few pieces in there for theme lighting, but for the amount of money that they put into that and such, it will not be abandoned. I can almost guarantee you that it's not going to be a ghost town out there. So they're going to reinvent something for that. I
They
mean,
have to.
yeah,
You
they're
have
not
to.
going to abandon it. There's no way
No.
they could do that. There's no way they can afford it.
Yeah. Yeah. They won't take that big a loss.
No,
No.
no.
Guys. So all right, we're going on an hour and a half. Biggest takeaway, Maddie. Biggest takeaway from D23 this weekend. What did you enjoy most? What could they have fixed? What was your highlight moment?
I think, well, okay, let me preface this. I didn't really get a chance to walk around and see everything. Okay.
Ah, Zawenya.
Thank you. Thank you, Vince. Thank you, Vince.
Yes. Yes.
Um, I got talked into doing that, and I didn't think it was going to be broadcast.
I
So.
will post the pictures in the video later, folks.
Oh, you haven't posted?
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
No, I thought you did post them.
No, just the picture. Just the picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for me, I mean, most of my time was at the booth,
Yeah.
and in fact, on Friday, I probably only got about 30 feet away from the booth. I didn't even have lunch, So
Yeah.
Anyways, for me, it was just connecting with people, seeing people's reactions to the things that I was bringing to show them, to share with them about my dad.
Yeah.
It was interesting to for people that knew my dad to learn a little bit more, or they were surprised to find out that he was also a child actor,
Yeah.
or his military background or whatever.
Yeah.
It was just amazing just to kind of see people's reactions. Maybe even younger people that, my dad's been gone 20 years, so
Yeah.
he hasn't been around giving discussions. So there's a lot of people that have never heard my dad speak.
Yes.
And, but they were very gracious and truly interested.
Yeah.
And that touched me.
Yeah.
And then just as I was saying too, so many other people, willing to help and give advice as far as where to go or who to talk to, as far as preserving all of this stuff. So that was very touching to me also. So
Yeah.
that's my biggest takeaway. I mean, it's the personal thing.
Yeah.
Jason, it would be, not riding the attractions, but actually having the hanging on to Mickey's hand moment.
Yeah.
Jason?
Yeah, I think for me, it's this idea that we're at this inflection point, right? I mean, and I think that for me, I walked away from it going like, the recent loss of Richard Sherman highlights this sort of shift that we're going through at the same time as this nostalgia is trying so desperately to be, captured, preserved, and saved by many. It's also a time of great growth for the parks where they're trying to reinvent and grow. Um, every single park's got expansion, new land, shovels in the dirt. And I think that's the approach of how we get there is really what I took away from this. Honoring the past whilst looking towards what Walt would always have said, which is dreaming the next big, great, beautiful tomorrow.
Keep moving
And
forward.
I find that reflects with me inside personally, because I'm like, how do I hang on to the past? How do I continue to learn, quite frankly, and again, I'd say this, Matt, even if you weren't here, but how does my generation, how do the younger generations um, learn about the great work that like even your father did, so that we have that and that we can use that as our compass for how we go forward. More tactically speaking, 4 a.m. virtual queue is very hard. I wanted to be up every night to stay at the Honda Center, and then getting up at 4 a.m. to do the virtual queue was tough. And it was interesting. Somebody had said to me, like, if you go to the parks, you get a virtual queue at 7 a.m. for an 8 a.m. open. Like, should we, and could we be thinking about that going forward? And I thought, well, that's really a good point. But I think, again, it's the old to the new, right? The ability that they brought in, like for me, the Mercedes was that touch of old, something like the volume and seeing that, or, the time travel, like walkthrough experiences, the new.
Yeah.
And then, again, for me, it's some of the legends, the meetings of the people. But I think at the end of the day, Matt, you hit it on the head. It's the moments, whether it's
Yeah.
old, whether it's new, whether it's positive or negative. It is the moments, whether you're connecting with somebody, connecting with something, a detail that you see in the park, or just something that you saw on the expo floor. It is those moments that unite us, and I sort of say that, not realizing that is, I think, if you go back and then read that third verse of It's a Small World, that's exactly what Richard was trying to get across.
Yeah.
And the gentleness, the helping one another, the humankind. And I'll say that to say, it was an absolute delight meeting you, Matt, in person.
Oh, thank you.
Vince, you embody the biggest hearts out there, and
Thank you.
you both literally made a moment for me this weekend that I am appreciative of. So thank you to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's awesome, Jason. You know what? It's kind of nice because I'm up in Northern California, and there's a few people that are close by, and but I don't get to interact. My interaction with everybody is pretty much here, and I get to see Matt, who I consider a brother. We if I'm lucky, so.
You blanked out. We didn't hear the whole thing.
Oh, I was just saying, yeah, no, what I was saying was, we don't get to hang out as often as we like, once a month if we're lucky, I consider, so being able to spend time with you this weekend and talk to people. And, my thing was, do you know Sam McKim? And getting, like you said, getting to talk to people and getting to hopefully educate them and meeting these people. And when people would say, "Are you Vince?" and I know you. That's surreal to me because all I wanted to do when we started this was just have fun, talk to people, and hear their experiences. And I've gotten the chance to do that in such the biggest way. And I'm going to go down this list because this is some of the people that these are the names of people, but there's so many people that are just regular people. But there was I got to see Margaret Carey, Bill Rogers, and Camille Dixon. The minute I saw both of them, my childhood just flashed before me. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and Jason. You know what?
I'm not doing it.
Matt, you have to. Off air, we will do this. But
Okay.
he has them on his voicemail.
Oh, okay.
They do his voicemail message.
Oh, that's
but yeah,
fun.
incredible. Tom Nabby. Tom Nabby is just the sweetest
Love
man.
Tom.
He hands me this pin and he goes, Vince, I want you to wear this. Yeah, but he goes, you can't get this pin from anybody but me, Tom Nabby. You know, and,
Oh, so now you both hold on.
but you know, again, there's
can,
Terry Hardin Jackson. There's go ahead.
Oh, there you go.
I see your pin and I raise you a pin.
There you go. I see your Tom Nabby and I raise you a Terry Hardin Jackson pin,
Ooh,
a Disneyland
I don't have that
69
one
year.
yet.
And it's signed. And it's signed. Tribe, if you're here, you know what I'm talking about. Didier was amazing to meet. He was such a wealth of information. So amazing to go to his booth, Hyperion, and talk to them. Guys, if you haven't been over there, again, you know, Walt Disney El Grupo in Latin America. And then there was a second book, but there were more. The Origins of Walt Disney's True Life Adventures. And these books are put out by Hyperion. And they're amazing books. They're great. Look them up. You gotta have them in your collection. Absolutely great. Eddie Sato. Eddie Sato was so much fun to talk to. Matt, you're good friends with him. And right away, he just said, I will do anything. Whatever you need me, I'm there. Eddie was just incredible. Haley Claire, David Koenig and his wife, Rick Law, Bob Gurr, Leslie Iwerks, and Bob Olszewski. You know what? All these people that you talk to them and they're like, oh, I'd love to be on the podcast. You know, I'll make time. You know, that's amazing to me that they Jason was instrumental in sending people our way, you know, and so
Thank you, Jason.
It's so neat, you know, when these people when they want to come and talk about their, you know, their life and all that they've done, that it's heartwarming to me. And it makes me feel, you know, there's times where I have rough nights at work and I'm thinking about this and I'm just excited that I get to do a podcast with Matt McKim, you know, that I get to reach a few people maybe. And, you know, it just, it's warm for me. It's heartwarming. So thank you guys. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. It's my honor to be working side by side with you, Vince, and meeting people like you, Jason. But let me just say one last thing. Oh, go ahead, Jason.
No, I was just going to say one of the other books that I think should be on everybody's list if you haven't is the Walt Museum pre-order for their artifacts, because
yes,
you know, one of the things that and I've told D23 this, and this was just my personal thing. I was like, I wished that the tribute to the Sherman Brothers was not so close to the Honda Center timeline. But then the very next night was the Walt Museum or the Family Museum's Artifacts of Walt. And that was right close enough to me that I was like, I really wanted to see it, but it was too close to the time of the Honda Center and just traveling. I was like, I'm not going to do it. But they've got a book coming out. And I saw at their booth sort of an advanced copy of it that they had out. And I was telling Vince this, but I didn't realize, but in the book, they've actually got photos of Walt's hands, like models from actual encasings of his hands. And it's very detailed. And I was talking to Bree there, and she was talking about how even on his ring finger, they knew that they saw some level of detail, like, okay, that must be where his wedding ring was. But the mold that they had was not giving the detail. And through the research that these groups of people did, they were able to figure out that it's actually like the third mold out of a set. And so every time, as you know, you do a mold, you lose the detail. Yeah. And they backtracked and they found one of the more original molds. And the fascinating story behind this is the older, more original mold had the detail enough that they could see what exactly Walt's wedding ring looked like. Now, here's the crazy part of this. And they didn't even know this. And this is why I love going around and talking to these booths and talking to the people in them. Once they figured out what that ring looked like, they were like, wait a second. We have a ring in the archives archives.
Oh.
And they went to the archives, and while they didn't know at the time what it was, they knew it was a ring, but they didn't know like the history of it. They were able to match the ring to the mold and be able to now state that they actually have his wedding ring in the archives.
Oh, wow.
And so that many people are fascinated by the light or the lamps, so to speak, that were in the firehouse apartment. Most people, more recently would be familiar with not the Gone with the Wind version, but the green paisley Fenton that was in there for many, many years. But those were not the originals. And they've got photos, detailed photos of what Bree was telling me are very fragile lamps. And these are just some of the like watches, shoes, and stuff are all in this book. It comes out, I believe, in October, November. It's $50, and I'm telling you, that's just one I would add to that list as well.
Yeah. And we touched on this one earlier. And this one, I got to talk to David Koenig about this one, the 55ers. Again, for those that want to learn more about Disney history, this is a really good book. See David Koenig, look him up. He's in the group. If you message him, he would love to send you a book. It's amazing. I started cracking it open a little bit today, and it's really interesting. But also, one other thing, November 10th, save the date for the Bowers Museum. That is the presentation date for the Sam McKim. There it is, right there. November 10th. We're going to do his dad, and there are going to be so many incredible things. There are going to be, well, Matt, tell them. Go ahead. Take it away, my friend. This is your 2 minutes. Go for it.
Well, as people probably know, we've been going through the 32 boxes that my dad brought home when he retired.
Yeah.
And we're going through personal boxes that have not been really gone through, at least by my brother and myself. And I brought in some things actually this weekend that we found in those boxes. But there's some things that we haven't shared with you guys. I mean, there's tons of stuff. I'm kind of wondering how much I share and how much I want to tease.
I think that's to be held for the November show. And then
the gala event.
I was going to say, I think you've done a really good job on the tease, but maybe Matt, one of the things that you can talk about is like, so of the items that you did bring to the expo,
yes,
what's one of the things that you brought that you think that if I wasn't there would be something that, hey, that was really cool. I know what mine is because I've seen them because Vince walked me through every piece of it. I was lucky, but I'm just curious what your take on that is.
Well, and okay, so it's all perspective, right? I mean, it was kind of interesting for us to open up a box and find original sketches of the early mansion stuff before it turned into what it did. That was kind of fun. So maybe I did actually share with some people, but we weren't showing the whole image and everything, but we found actual sketches, real originals that my dad had sketches for Sleeping Beauty, storyboards for it. And they actually have the pinholes in them. So these were up on the boards for Walt and the animators to be discussing and working over. So that's kind of fun. These have not been seen since like 1958, and they've never been shared to the public. Yeah. So that's some stuff you'll be seeing. Hollywood pieces. I brought in a few photographs, but we'll be sharing my dad's autograph books and some of that stuff. We found the sketch that Jimmy Cagney, sitting across from my dad, they both did caricatures and then signed them to each other and swapped them. We found it finally. So there's a few things we're still hoping to find, but we just have a treasure trove of things that haven't been shared or seen in so many years. So, and then we've got personal artwork that we'll be sharing with people too that have never been seen. So some of this stuff we've been picking and choosing that we're going to put on glassware, or we're going to reproduce in giclées. So we're going to give people a chance to actually purchase these and take them home.
Pins.
So I'm sorry?
Pins as well. Amazing pins.
Pins.
Yeah.
We actually.
Joshua Schaefer.
Yes. Thank you to Joshua Schaefer. Has done an amazing job in helping us get.
Josh is behind the pins.
Yes.
Yeah.
Pins, and
love him.
We actually, Dean had kind of thrown an idea out, and we've got a couple of bolo ties that are inversions of the bolo ties that are going to be kind of fun.
Yeah.
So, anyways, we've got some fun and exciting stuff. There's going to be a pre-show that you'll go through, so it's kind of a mini museum. We're going to have some film clips from my dad's film past, his Hollywood days, and we actually have a 35 millimeter print of my dad doing a screen test with Shirley Temple. So we're getting that digitized. So we're going to be sharing that with people. And actually, it was the film, and I can't think of the name of it right now. For me to dig it out, it'd take too long. But it was the role. My dad didn't get the part, but it went to Dickie Moore, the cute little kid with the big brown eyes.
Yeah.
And if my dad had gotten the role, he would have given Shirley Temple her first screen kiss. Dickie Moore actually gave it to her. So, anyways, we've got some pretty amazing stuff here. And then you're going to go into the theater, and we're going to have the presentation. So I want to mention something and then transition to Walt's Mercedes. So the thing about all of these items to share is there's stories behind them.
Yes.
And that's what we want to share with people is the stories behind this stuff. Because you can see these things either in a museum or in a book or whatever, and if they're not described properly, there's stories behind these things, and it's bringing these artifacts and these pieces of art or objects alive with these stories. So let me transition to Walt's little Mercedes there.
Were you beeline to it yesterday?
Oh my gosh! That was exciting for me. I'm a car guy anyway.
Yeah.
But just seeing it on, that darn cat and knowing the stories behind it, it's just exciting. So thank you, Joanna. But my dad had told the story about Walt driving home each night, and he would go by this Mercedes dealership. And, if he stopped at the light, he'd be looking in and seeing this little Mercedes. He just fell in love with it. And he said, boy, I wish I could afford that. And he was always putting his own money back into the company. So he was very careful with his monies. And he'd drive by. This is how my dad told the story. But he'd say, boy, I wish I could afford that. And light would change green and he'd drive home. And the next time he'd, boy, I wish I could afford that Mercedes. And then one day it hit him. And he says, I can afford that. So he pulled in and he bought this car. And so it was very special to him. It's more than just a nice little Mercedes that Walt owned. This is something that he looked at, admired, and wanted. And there was resistance to actually buy it until he really kind of thought, wait a second, I think I can afford this. And I have heard a story that Lillian got upset with him actually for spending that kind of money on that car. But anyways, again, here's an amazing piece of history, Walt and film work and such, but it's got a very touching story behind it, and that's what people need to know. It's more than just a hunk of metal and rubber.
Yeah,
I enjoyed learning that story. That even after he had bought that car, he was still very much mindful of the fact that it was, for him at that time, expensive.
Sure.
And that's one of the reasons why he rented it out to be in movies.
Hey, Lillian.
Figured, Yeah.
Hey, Lillian, I got some of the money back.
Right. And so that's the other part. It's like once you know the backstory, you can go watch these movies and see that car in there. And to see that, and then yeah, to be on the floor where you see this car on that big, circular stage just kind of staring at you, you're like, wow.
Yeah.
And it's the same way I feel though when I stood in the firehouse apartment. It's the exact same way I felt when I walked into Walt's 3H apartment on the Burbank lot. Um, it's like if this car could talk,
Yeah.
these walls could speak. What was
Yeah.
he thinking about? What was he dreaming about? What when he was sitting at the light in the car? What new animation was he working on?
Yeah.
It's always the what ifs, and I love dreaming those types of things to think about them
Yeah.
along the way because there's so few things of his time that are still around.
Yes.
Yeah.
The works of people like the David Smiths of the world who spent their entire careers archiving and copiously documenting this stuff. Um, you know,
Yeah.
I'm grateful for the people, including you, Matt, who are trying to chronologically capture these important moments in the history of the people who did really powerful work along the way. I'm looking forward to November 10th. I will ask the question that probably everybody's asking, Vince. How do they get tickets? How do they go? How do they show up at this place? And all of that fun stuff. Do we know that?
Well, so far we are looking. So we're looking at a couple of different companies to get the tickets. Um, we are going
Online.
to post it.
Online.
Yeah, online. We're going to do it online. So we're going to post them through our group first. We're Leo Holzer, Mice Chat. We're gonna, let everybody know where, how, date specifics, things like that. We're gonna give everything. We want to be as detailed as we can. I think we're still working out. Are we gonna have a pre-sale for the items? Maybe, maybe not. But I mean, there's gonna be so many items, and there is going to be one surprise item, and I've let you know in about it. But there is going to be one surprise item that is going to be there.
Who'd you let
And
it? No. Oh, you're talking about me. Oh,
yeah, oh yeah, no, we've told you. I've told you, so keep that
okay.
DL. Yeah, okay. But
I
Matt,
don't know what you're talking about. Never mind.
yeah. So, but there is an item for those that are listening. Um, you're definitely going to want to be there for this item. It's going to be as limited and rare as it gets, and copies of it are going to be for sale. So just keep that in mind. A little money away. Hopefully, you guys will enjoy what's there, and there's going to be a lot of fun items. But this one item is just something I'm so excited about. Like I get tingles on the back of my neck thinking about it. So
And really what I'm trying to do here too is to keep everything affordable,
yes,
for the tickets, for
yeah,
the items that we will be selling.
yes,
It's there's no reason to be asking for too much money.
yeah,
It's all about sharing my
yeah,
dad's life and
yeah.
artwork, and um,
For
so
somebody to have a piece of something that belonged to your
yeah,
dad.
yeah, and
Yeah,
so that's very important to me.
yeah,
Um, we have to pay for these venues and such, of course,
yeah,
but we 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 also want to be able to continue to take care of this stuff.
yeah.
So
It's
and we're
everybody.
still getting
Yeah,
organized.
we're still we're finding our way, guys, and you've all been so supportive. The people that have been so helpful and giving us advice, and Dusty has just been incredible. Everybody that's talked to us about this, how to do it. Joshua with the pens, your
Kathy
cousin.
Barone,
Yeah,
yeah,
so many people. So this is one of these things that it's a legacy thing. It's a legacy thing for the McKim family, and that's what we want to bring. This is basically something we're talking on in the future, and just a few things that are just we're hoping to do and put out there, and it's real exciting. It's really really exciting, and we want you to know all the different layers of who Sam. You know about the maps. You know about Lincoln. You know about you know the Legendary Award. You know about the Haunted Mansion. What you don't know about is he was a war hero. He was absolutely a war hero. What you don't know about is the child actor. All these things that people are like, oh my goodness. I'd walk up to people and I'd go, do you know Sam McKim? No. So let me talk to you for a minute. It was fun. Oh my gosh. And so then when you point, there is this legendary award and they're like, oh my goodness, and everybody's looking at it and staring. And is that real? And yesterday we had an interaction with the lady as we were leaving.
Oh
And
yeah.
she was so excited to be able to hold this award. She couldn't realize how heavy it was. But she was just so she's like, I know Sam McKim. And again, she probably didn't know him, but she knew
That
his
was sweet.
work. But
Yeah.
it was sweet. It was just it was so organic and just so it was a beautiful moment. I love that moment. So again, it's just we want to bring things to people to show
And I have to say too, though, that the people that had met my dad and knew my dad, I was very touched by all the nice things that were being said.
yeah.
It was touching.
Yeah. Yeah, they're willing to help. They're willing to come out. They're willing to volunteer. Whatever. It was amazing. The one thing I heard from people was, Matt, whatever you need, I'm there. And again, the Disney community. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, we are going on 2 hours,
Thank you.
and it doesn't feel like it's been 2 hours. So, you know what? I know for you, Jason, it's getting a little late. It's already Tuesday there on the East Coast. So thank you. I know you're tired, jet lag, guys. For those that don't know, for those that weren't here earlier, he went from here to North Carolina, but just yesterday, 24 hours ago, he was in Anaheim. So he's doing us a favor, talking to us about D23 and what a great
I
time he had.
mean,
So
when you told me, you're like, hey, I think we're going to go on Facebook. I think we're going to do a thing. Would you like to join Matt and I mean, how do I turn that down? No,
Thank you.
seriously, like, it's an absolute honor. It was an honor yesterday. It's an honor today. I love everything that you guys are about. I love the community that you guys are creating. I love the history that you guys are preserving. So thank you,
thank you.
thank you, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
for your
Jason.
time today, Jason.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. I know you got to get to bed, but again, thanks and your knowledge. So thank you. We will catch up. Get some sleep. I will give you a call tomorrow. I got a few things that I still need to talk to you about. So,
Ooh.
again, yeah, again, have a good night. Gunny and Susan Mansker Emsley, and of course our buddy Danny DeMeyer. Thank you guys,
Oh yes.
everybody. You were all amazing.
Thank you, Danny.
Yeah, you know what? We love you guys. Tribe, thank you so much for having us
Yes.
yesterday. It was a great dinner, great get together. Joshua Schaefer, all you guys, Rick Law,
Terry.
Terry, absolutely. Terry Hardin Jackson can't, the life of, I love that lady. My sister was there, Debbie Weiss. It
Yes.
was a fun time. Jason, you missed out. But, anyways, all right, guys. Thank you. We will see you maybe this weekend. We're working on a guest, but we will figure it out. Jason, thank you. Maddie, appreciate your time.
Yes.
Everybody,
Absolutely.
we will see you real soon. Take care,
Thank you,
guys. Have a
everyone.
good night. Have a great week. God bless. Bye bye.